want to welcome you to East Point Baptist Church, and we are looking at the parable of the rich fool, Luke 12, verses 13 to 21. Luke 12, 13 to 21. And when the company said unto him, Master, speak my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. And he said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, I guess the light bulb came on. And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, So thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then who shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. The parable of the rich fool have a very logical division. We have three parts. Number one, the reason for the parable, verses 13 through 15. Number two, the parable itself, verses 16 through 20. And then the lesson, verse 21. Jesus is here speaking to a crowd, and then he has one of the crowd, which is not unusual, interrupts him with a question. The reason for the parable is this man who was greedy, who was selfish, who was covetous. The reason for the parable verse is 13 through 15. One of the crowd spoke to Jesus and said, Master, it's the word for teacher. Teacher, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. There were rabbis in the day that were asked to solve problems. Some of them did. But you notice his request is not, Jesus, will you listen to this case? My brother and I were having an argument over the inheritance. Will you just hear this case and be just and make the right decision? No, that's not what he asked. He is not wanting fairness. He's not wanting justice. He's wanting Jesus to use his authority as a rabbi to make his brother give him what part of the inheritance that he wants. He's being selfish. Now, the Jewish custom was this. The oldest brother got 2/3 share, and the younger brother got 1 share. If there are more than one brothers, the oldest got 2 shares, and all the other brothers got 1 share. He was probably the younger brother. We don't know that. So Jesus' response, verse 14, man, anthrope, the Greek word for man, anthropos, man, who made me a judge or divider over you? Jesus didn't come here to do their equivalent of probate courts in that day and settle disputes over inheritances. He didn't come to be a judge in civil cases. He didn't come to be a divider of inheritances. Jesus in his first coming come to seek and to save that which was lost. to become sin, who knew no sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. And he will have nothing to do with this type of squabble. But he uses this, as Jesus often did, to teach a truth. So verse 15, he said unto the crowd, take heed. See what this man is doing. Take heed and beware or watch out for covetousness. Is not one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not covet? What is covetousness? It is a greedy desire to have more. There's nothing wrong with working hard and obtaining things in this life. Like the Bible tells us that God has given us richly all things to enjoy. Paul wrote, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Live for the Lord. Be content with what you have, and you will do well in life. Beware of covetousness, for there's more to life than gathering up a superabundance of things that you can possess. In Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, lay not up for yourselves treasures of this world, where moth can eat it up, where rust can corrupt, where thieves can break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. How you do that? You live for the Lord, you give your tithes, you give offerings, you realize you are steward of all the possessions that you have. They really belong to God, and you dedicate all that you have for the service of God. Dr. Adrian Rogers, who was pastor of Bellevue Baptist Church in Memphis for years, I think they eventually moved to Germantown. I got to hear him when I was in seminary. He was very eloquent. Heard him say this one day, and I don't remember if it was live or radio or what, but he said, man's philosophy is this: get all you can all you get, and sit on the can. Very profound. And there are a lot of people, they live this way. Get all the things that you can get and enjoy yourself. Forget God, forget everyone else. The reason for the parable, this man was selfish, he was covetous, and he wanted Jesus to use his authority to make his brother give him what he thought was his share, whether it truly belonged to him or not. So secondly, we go to the parable in verses 16 through 20, and we call this the parable of the rich fool. Verse 16, and he told this parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. Here's a man, he's already rich, and one of his enterprises is he is a farmer. And so one year he plants his crops, no doubt as he usually does. But that year, it's unreal how good the produce is, how good the fruits are. He does well. It's a bumper crop. Everything must have went well. You had rain when you needed it, but not too much to make it rot. You had sun when you needed it. You didn't have the damage from the bugs or the insects or locusts. And so he just had a great year with his crops. So verse 17, he has a good problem. He says, or he's thinking, he's reasoning with himself. Got a good problem. What am I going to do? Because I don't have enough room to put all my crops that I've got in this year. Man, that's a good problem to have. that God would bless you so much that you didn't have room for all of it. That's a great blessing. But unfortunately, he didn't give God the credit for allowing him to have this blessing. And he made bad decision after bad decision. And notice here throughout this passage of the parable, how many times he says, I, me, my, I, me, my, I. It's all focused on himself. Never thanks God. Never thinks to love his neighbor as himself and help those who are needy. Verse 18, and he said, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my fruits and my goods. What an idiotic thing to do. What was wrong with the barns? Probably nothing. Why do you fix something if it's not broke? Why do you mess with something when it's working? Why in the world do you tear down good barns to build bigger ones? I mean, he could have just added a few barns. To me, that would have made a lot more sense. But it just seems that everything went to his head, and I guess he wanted probably fancier barns. I'll tear down all my barns and build greater ones, and there I'll put all these crops I've got in. Then verse 19, I'll say to myself, say to my soul or self, man, you got it made. You got all these good things, all these crops, and they're going to last you for many years. So take thine ease. That word, take thine ease, is used by Jesus in that passage in Matthew 11:28 through 30. Come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you rest is the same word. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for you shall find rest unto your souls. That's the noun version of that word. You will find rest. So refresh yourself, take it easy, and eat, drink, and be merry. Enjoy the physical things of the world. But what did he leave out? Boy, my tithe is going to be really big this year. You know, the local synagogue down the street, they've got some repairs that need to be made, and I've got plenty of money I can help them with that. Love your neighbor as yourself. The Old Testament said to help the poor, help the widows, help the orphans, help the strangers. Did this man do any of that? No. This was his, and he was going to have it all for himself. This is all mine, and I'm going to enjoy it all for myself. Nothing for God, nothing for anyone else. Verse 20. But God said unto him, thou fool. You're a fool. The word means without sense. You're a fool. Why was he was a fool? He left God out of the picture. He probably didn't know God. He left out tithing and offerings. He left out helping his local synagogue, the Jewish version of our local church today. He left out helping the poor, the widows, the orphans, the strangers. You fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Literally, they are asking for your soul. What that means is, tonight you're going to die. And all your plans are nothing. They'll not come to pass. Then he asks, then who shall those things be which thou hast provided? All this great crop that you have from this year, what's going to happen to that? You know, the odds are what would happen to that? His children, his heirs, whoever they are, would probably fight and squabble over who would get the most of it. What a sad ending. Then in verse 21, we find the lesson. Verse 21. So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. The lesson, Jesus said, the greatest commandment of all is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. Love God supremely. Give God first place. And the second greatest, love your neighbor as yourself. And if you don't love God, if you're not committed to Him, you don't know God, then you're a fool. And if you don't love your neighbor as yourself and help them, you're not doing what God has called you to do. Lay up treasure for yourself in heaven, not on this world. Be rich toward God. Realize that you are a manager of all your resources and use that to further God's kingdom and to help others. So we have 3 applications. Application number 1, avoid covetousness, and where that's a greedy desire to have more. Learn to be content with what you have. And again, it's okay to better yourself as you grow in life, as you increase in wages. If you want to move up to a better house, better cars, that's okay as long as that's not the most important thing. Well, don't let the things of this world be the love that is in your heart. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So don't be greedy. Be thankful for all that God has given you and enjoy that in that context. Application number 2, live for God through Jesus. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by Him. If you've never given your heart to Jesus, do that. Commit to Jesus as Lord and become a part of God's family. And then live for Him every day that you live. And application number 3 is to help others. Love your neighbor as yourself. Bear one another's burdens. Pray for one another. May God bless His word.